Hey folks, Nick here from Another BookTube channel. Today, showing off some tales from the Crypt stories. This is a magazine-sized reprint from the 80s, published by Russ Cochran, that collects just various of like the best tales from the Crypt tales in one really awesome package. Got two covers by Jack Davis to appreciate, which is great. This features 8 stories. We're not going to look at all 8 today because I would love for you guys to, if you like what I show you, go grab a copy of this book on the secondary market. I don't really know what it goes for. I forget what I paid for this. It wasn't a lot. But even if you can't find this specific edition, there are modern reprints currently in publication for Tales from the Crypt. So if you've never seen the inside of Tales from the Crypt, if you maybe watched the TV show when you were younger, and you've always wanted to see what the books look like, well, here you go. Like I said, we're not going to look at every single one of them, but I'll flip through just so you can appreciate some of the artwork, maybe something will catch your eye. This first story is by Jack Davis, who is the man, who's awesome. This one here is George Evans, who I'm not super familiar with his style. It's not my favorite, but it's still really solid. It's just that compared to the other EC artists, doesn't really stand out too much to me. I almost chose this one to look at. This is Reed Crandall. A lot of great Marie Severin colors in this one. Just the color choices are really great. You can kind of see just the vibrant colors going into cool blues, coming back into vibrancy, and it all just really works, like saving a red background for a shocking moment, here again. But we're going to stop here, and you can see the end of that story. Pretty nasty ending. And this one I decided to show off because of the ending. One thing that, you always hear about these EC, comics is how violent they were. They were, the subject of the Senate committee of Dr. Frederick Wortham, put them on blast, and they got investigated, and Bill Gaines from EC Comics had to testify. There was this whole thing because they were saying that these comics were corrupting the youth of America. But whenever I would read one of these old comics, I wouldn't quite see that. I'm like, what's the big deal? The ending of this one is startling in its violence and brutality. So it's called Strop, You're Killing Me. The art is by Bill Elder, and it is about this firehouse. It's just a 2-man firehouse. It's a small town. This is the 50s, 1953. They didn't have fires back then. They didn't need big fire trucks and anything. But the old guy here, that is, he has been at the firehouse for 17 years or so, and there's a new hire, the new fire chief, Frank Miller, funnily enough, a young guy who is very gung-ho to kind of really revolutionize and push this firehouse into the 20th century. First thing I'll note is I really just like the design of the fire truck. I think Bill Elder probably used a reference, if I had to guess. Just because, it's not overly detailed, but it's very sound. It makes sense, everything about it. And the first thing that the new fire chief does is instruct his old colleague that they're going to be completely renovating everything around here. They're going to paint the firehouse, and they're going to paint the truck. Get out there, get some brass polish, get some chrome polish, get some paint. And the old whippersnapper is none too pleased about it. He wants to just hang out in his wicker chair. There's not a lot of fires that go on. This is supposed to be an easy job. And he's been putting out fires since this guy was in diapers, So it's one of those situations, the two generations not seeing eye to eye. Really interesting textures on this wall in the background. Kind of see it here and here. It's like a marble notebook, like those black squiggles. It must be screen tone, because I think that Bill Elder probably would go insane if he was doing that just by hand. Over here, this is definitely screen tone. This is just the dots. I think this is just gray. But we do see it again here. It's got to be screen tone. But they're Discontent continues. The young fire chief is trying to get the old guy to quit, and he won't quit. He's 5 years from retirement. Um, uh, and the problem of the old guy is going to solve itself here, at least to Frank Miller, to his understanding, because he gets a call in the middle of the night that there's a house fire, and whose house is it but our old guy, Dan, old Dan. So rather than rushing out to go put out the fire, he says, great, you know what? I'm going to kill two birds with one stone here. I'm going to tell them that the truck didn't start, like the engine was busted, and that made me late to the fire, and that's what unfortunately leads to Dan's demise. And so with that, he's able to get rid of Dan and also get approval to get funds for a new fire truck. But unfortunately, he has to get his comeuppance. You know, you're not allowed to get away with anything in these comics. So it's in the middle of the night again. The phone rings, and there's another fire that's that's broken out, another house fire, and this time it's his house. And so he rushes down this the new pole. Oh yeah, that's something I should have pointed out. I guess the young guy insisted on getting a fireman pole installed so that they would hang out upstairs, and then when a fire comes, they've got to slide down the pole. So he rushes to the pole, slides down, and finds that the pole has been replaced with a razor-sharp steel strip. The implication being that I guess the ghost of Dan replaced it. And he slides down, and it chopped him to bits. It is a nasty ending. One of the most violent that I had ever seen in one of these comics. So I felt like I had to show it. Just gross. And again, the great color choices. The red of the fire truck, and then just the intense red of the blood. Everything else washed out in a single like monochrome to really sell just like the pop of that red. Murray Severin was a beast on colors. Incredible. These old EC comics really kind of almost live and die on Murray Severin's colors. Like the art is incredible, but what really helps sell all of it is the color choices. Another Jack Davis story, which is awesome, but we're going to skip ahead to Half Baked by ghastly Graham Engels, a personal favorite of mine, and I think you'll see why. He in particular, I think, had a lot of influence on some of my favorite cartoonists that would come after him. So in Half Baked, we have a restaurateur named Calvin who really, really hates lobsters. He thinks that they are nasty, disgusting creatures, and he takes great pleasure in cutting them down the middle with his big sharp knife and then popping them into the oven to burn alive, to broil alive. And I think this is a fantastic sequence here where he puts the lobster into the oven and we see the yellow flames, and then we get the oven eye view, or the lobster eye view in this case, looking out back at Calvin. And this right here, the way this is inked, this is John Toddleben through and through. Like those single straight lines just all through the just all parallel, going through the entire face with varying thick and thins. This is how John Toddleben inks in general. But like if you're watching my Swamp Thing read along, you've seen a face that looks like this. You've seen inking that looks exactly like that. One of the chefs at Calvin's restaurant, calls out Calvin for being so sadistic. Why do you hate the lobsters so? They're living creatures. And he just, says that, they're hideous, they're ugly, they deserve terrible deaths. And we cut over here. There's a fisherman checking on his lobster pots, and his pots are all empty. They've been empty for weeks. He has no idea why. Everyone else's pots are full. He hasn't caught a single lobster in 2 weeks. He returns home. All of these people have Graham Engels' face. Like all of his characters do kind of look the same. Even the man and wife here. The jowls is such a staple of the Graham Engels face. But the guy's kid is going without. They can't afford milk for him, can't afford good clothes. Guy can't catch a lobster to save his life. we are back with the restaurant and Calvin. They're running low on lobster, so he has to go make a run. He's got to go pick up some more lobsters, more hideous, disgusting lobsters. And he sets off on a little skiff, a little boat, and we discover that the reason our fisherman doesn't have any lobsters in his pot is that Calvin is going out and stealing them. He's pulling the pots before the fisherman gets to it, and he's taking all the lobsters out. Gets him, the 5-finger discount. No need to pay for these gross creatures. And here's more Toddlebin inking. I mean, again, those parallel just pen lines, and these kind of panels here could work. One thing I really like about this story in particular is that these stories could work in black and white. I mean, it's a good thing that they're not, because the blue really, sells the fact that it's night. But these images would work as black and white images, I believe. And it calls to mind to me Bernie Wrightson, who brings to mind Kelly Jones, like these just the blocks of black and white. The fisherman rushes out to confront the thief, and Calvin, he's not going to give up these fresh lobsters so easily. He tries to bribe the fisherman. Fisherman says, "No way, buddy, you're going to jail. You're a thief. You're messing with my livelihood here." So Calvin kills the fisherman, lashes him to his boat, and chops it to smithereens to sink it. And we see the axe in this previous panel here to set up that he's got an axe on board. I like that. But again, you got to have your comeuppance. Our guy driving home blows out a tire. I really love the way this car is drawn too. I mean, you don't get a lot of good vehicles, or you don't think of vehicle drawing in old EC comics. This is a banging old car. Love that. Love the blowout. And it pins him to the seat where, and the car bursts into flames, and now he becomes the lobster, burning alive. And it's mentioned that that the steering wheel goes through into his chest, into his stomach. So he's split down the seam just like he would do to the lobsters. And all he can do is roast. This is an Al Williamson story, which we're going to skip, unbelievably, because Al Williamson is awesome. Everything's awesome. All these artists are so great. So again, I encourage you to read, seek out this book to fully appreciate these stories. We're going to end with Prairie Schooner by Bernie Krigstein. I love to see a Krigstein. I don't think his stuff shows up as frequently as the other artists, but he's got such an interesting, unique way of inking. I don't want to say that there's a scarcity of line, because he uses a lot of line, but there's an efficiency here that is just really interesting. The way that he'll draw folds in cloth. He's not afraid to use a single thin line, but he's also not afraid to get chunky. Like these lines look like a thick brush where the ink is kind of running out on it. In this story, this woman, I think her brother or cousin, comes home from the sea. He's a captain or some old salty sea dog. He's lost his ship, and he starts running the house as though it were his ship. He's lost his mind completely. It's driving her insane because she has to, swab the deck, do all the cooking, all the cleaning, all that. But yeah, like something like this, like he doesn't, like, this is the way he'll do drapery, compared to everyone else, where there's a lot of usually thick, fluid black lines. These are just little like scratches almost. And then you have something like this where it's just black smudges, it looks like almost. There's no definition there. It's just the implication of a fold. It's like, this is where it would go. There's an economy of detail. Let's call it that, because there's definitely black on the page. There's not an economy of ink. There's definitely an economy of detail, of what we need to see, of what needs to be drawn, because sometimes, these black smudges will do the job. You don't need to go crazy with the detail the way like an Al Williamson would. So I wanted to show this one specifically because of the difference in drawing style between Krigstein and a lot of the other EC artists. Story ends with the house flooding after the woman passes out and has a heart attack while doing the cleaning. This guy who's made his office in the basement. The basement, floods with the water that's running, and he ends up drowning. So he gets his due for mistreating his sister, cousin, whatever. But yeah, that is this Tales from the Crypt. Those are some of the my favorite stories from this issue. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you check out other Tales from the Crypt stories. Let me know if you have any particular favorites that I should check out. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today, but now it's time to get back to reading.